Good evening, gentlemen. So tonight, I thought we might talk briefly about expert reports, but in particular about co-authored expert reports. So, can more than one expert be part of the one report? Is that admissible or inadmissible? So, if you're the principal author, can you rely on others? Do you have to tell the court or the tribunal that you've relied on other people? And if you do, and I guess, not really a spoiler alert, you do, what needs to be disclosed? So I guess the background to all of this is that, as we know, if you're giving an expert report, it's going to be subject to code of conduct. There's going to be court and tribunal directions and practice notes and things, and there's going to be procedural rules, which the reports have to comply with. And in particular, going back to basics, going back to the Evidence Act, um, an expert who is giving a report has to have specialised knowledge based on that person's training, study, or experience. And their opinion has to be wholly or substantially based on that knowledge. Otherwise, the opinion is inadmissible. So only people who know what they're talking about can give expert opinions, and that expert opinion has to be based on their own specialised knowledge. The same rules, surprise, surprise, apply to any co-author. So if you've got somebody else who's assisting you to draft the report, then to the extent that you're relying on that person also has to have the relevant knowledge, because it's pretty obvious you can't rely on someone who isn't an expert to help you draft your report. So in what circumstances are these reports relying on somebody else permissible? Well, if the opinion is, and it's an obvious quote, and this comes from Briz Connections Finance and Arup, which is a 2017 federal court case. So if the opinion is the result of an application of that specialised knowledge we were talking about, of the proposed witness, but it's reached following discussion and debate between the expert and somebody else, then that's okay, as long as it's the result of the application of that specialised knowledge. But it becomes a compromised opinion if the person who's the ultimate author of the report is just adopting somebody else's opinion, and they're not actually having the debate about it. They're not applying their own specialised knowledge to that opinion, and they're just reaching a compromise with somebody else. Well, you might think this, you might think it's black, I might think it's white, so let's just agree on grey and I'll stick grey in. You can't do that. You've got to rely on your own ultimate opinion, even if that is based on a discussion with somebody else who is equally qualified. So, and that application of your own specialised knowledge, that can come after you've discussed it, debated it with the other person. A consensus can emerge between the initial view of the expert and the other person, as in the expert who's the author and the other person. But again, it's still got to be the author's ultimate opinion based on their own specialised knowledge. So let's just have a look quickly at what happened in Briz Connections. So in this one, apparently the expert enlisted the help of his son, who apparently knew something about the context, but didn't have his father's expertise. And as you'll see, one of the no-nos is it wasn't clear who wrote which parts of the report, and to the extent that the expert's son was contributing to the report and contributing to the discussion, his opinions weren't actually based on his own training, study, or experience, just on what his father had told him over the years. So that means that you didn't have two people with that relevant training, experience, and skill. And again, one of the problems with the report itself was couldn't identify which part the father did, which part the son did, and what opinions had been deployed in forming, what knowledge was deployed in forming those opinions. So it was that compromised opinion. It wasn't the ultimate use of the knowledge of the real expert, and thinking about what someone else with expertise had said to him and had the debate and so on. It was an unqualified opinion influencing a qualified opinion, but they couldn't work out which was which. So that was ruled to be inadmissible. Obviously, drawing on this, if there is going to be a co-author, they have to be identified. Otherwise, how do you know? So they have to be identified because how do you know what their qualifications, training, or experience are? And secondly, as we know, experts need to be available for cross-examination. Well, if parts of the report have been written by not the person who's actually signed off on the report, then unless they're identified, the other side can't call them for cross-examination. So two very important reasons for having to identify the actual author of the report. There can be a main author and a secondary author, but you've got to identify them so that we know that they are actually experts and we know who needs to be or who should be available for cross-examination. So what do you actually need to say? Well, again, I think it's probably pretty obvious, but the identity, we've talked about that. You have to know who the co-authors are. You obviously have to know what their specialised knowledge is that qualifies them to be an expert. You've got to be able to identify which parts of the report each author is responsible for. You've got to know the roles. So exactly what has someone done? Did one person go out and do the inspection and the other person write the report? Were they both out there inspecting? Were they both writing part of the report? Did one of them draft it and the other one settle it? You've got to know the role of the authors. And again, this comes back to being able to test the opinion. And lastly, you've got to know what the process was that was undertaken to finalise and commission the report. So again, was it a case of one person drafting it and the other person taking it away and then just signing off on it? Or was there that debate and discussion? How exactly did it work that you came to finalise and commission the report? Again, so that there can be some, the cross-examiner knows who to ask about what. One or another example of this was a VCAT case, Anderson and Holden Peel projects, where the construction company produced several reports by three different authors, as in they were all part of all of the reports, as against a single, I think he was a plumber, gave his own report. But the trouble with those multiple reports was they didn't disclose which person was responsible for which opinion. It didn't specify the roles of each of the authors, or again, as we were talking, the process to sign off. And when they actually came to have the case in the tribunal, only one of the experts, the one who actually signed off the report, attended to give evidence. So they were left with the situation where the author possibly of not the author of possibly the relevant part of the report was there to be cross-examined. And obviously it wasn't reviewed properly, because in the evidence in the report it was said that one of the authors, and they didn't know which one it was, but it wasn't the one giving evidence, said that a core sample included a waterproof membrane. But in giving his oral evidence, the testifying expert said there was no waterproof membrane. So the difficulties and the issues, and I think he was described as a problematic witness, became readily apparent, and that meant that the single expert for the other side was preferred. So yes, we all understand that in some circumstances it is necessary to get someone else to assist with the report, just plain logistics. But there are rules that have to be followed if you're going to have your report admitted into evidence. So questions? And I'll endeavour to stop.
You touched on it.
Stop sharing.
Just want to. Sorry.
Sure.
I just want to confirm, if you say sent the same consultancy company sent out a couple of guys to do, say, this site inspection and did the testing, such as a water test or a dye test, or even put a level on a floor or a wall, and they just wrote down their notes of their site inspection, but someone else actually writes the report, you still need to note that these guys did the site inspection?
Oh, absolutely. Because if you're going to be cross-examined about what you saw on site, you can't be cross-examined about what you saw on site because you weren't there.
Yeah.
So you certainly need to disclose that somebody else actually did the inspection, and you'll need to disclose exactly how that inspection was recorded. So if it was videoed, or was it just notes? What was it?
Yeah, what I would normally do is sort of, if just say it's a multi-day inspection, different guys doing different things, you maybe the table in front, who was there on what day, what they did, how they assisted you as the author, that kind of thing. Because you might just have one of you guys in the office just like taking photos and using the level, doing the measurement, and that's why you write the notes. And, ultimately you're the author, but you can't just do all this stuff yourself. I wouldn't take the day, right?
Yeah. And look, again, it's down to logistics and have you actually got time to go out there, etc. But you might want to think about, so you send somebody else out to actually do the principal inspection or the first inspection, take photos or video or whatever, a bit of drone footage. You then finalise your report and you might discuss what was seen out there with that person, and you should disclose that. But before you actually sign off on your report, you might actually want to go down there and just check out the things that are apparent in the photographs, just so that you don't get caught in cross-examination by saying, oh, well, that photograph depicts this, but did you look? But we obviously don't know what was, 200 mils to the right-hand side of that, and the expert on the other side can say, well, I went out and that appears to display what's in the photograph, but 200 mils to the other side, there was another downpipe or something like that. So it does pay just to check if you can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you. Always a pleasure, David. Appreciate your time as always, and see you very soon, I hope.
You're welcome. Okay. Well, enjoy the rest of the evening.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.
Yeah.